Welcome back to What is Your Mountain? Today, we're diving into one of the most inspiring endurance events in the country, the Pan Mass Challenge. It's more than just a bike ride. It's the largest athletic fundraiser in the United States, raising over $70 million this year alone for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. My guest today, Jeff Breese, just completed the 2025 Pan Mass. Jeff is not only an accomplished leader in the wealth management space, but also a passionate endurance athlete who takes on challenges that test both the body and spirit. Today, we'll talk about his experience on the ride, the purpose behind it, and how it connects to the mountains we all face in life. Welcome to the next episode of What is Your Mountain? Well, good morning, Jeff. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on What is Your Mountain? This is actually our first podcast that we're doing on location.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the Valley. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Quick question about the Phoenix area here. Well, actually, technically, we're in Scottsdale. I live in a really hot, humid part of the country, and anytime I talk to anyone that's from this area, they say, "But it's hot here, but it's a dry heat."
Sure.
It's really, really hot. What exactly is a dry heat?
I mean, you just get to a place where it doesn't matter if it's dry or moist or humidity, or it's just hot. And it's the duration of it that really tests you, and I think that might lead into part of our conversations about how you endure things. But it is different. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I would tell you that a high 80s day in Boston with 88% humidity is way worse than 105, which it was here yesterday. So, you can get used to anything, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the name of this podcast is What is Your Mountain? But not everybody's climbing a mountain. But you and I did climb a bit of a mountain the other day. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's two major mountains here in Phoenix. One is Camelback Mountain, which is the more famous of the two. The other one is called Piestewa Peak, and tends to be a little bit more enjoyable. So I endeavored to take you under the lesser known one to create an affinity to, as I call it, my mountain, because that's where I spend a good amount of time. And really, since we moved from the outside suburbs into central Phoenix 3 years ago, that's my refuge. That's a place I get to go. And as you experienced, you turn into this preserve, and you're instantly away from the city, and it's a fairly robust hike that you can choose to upgrade. And so that's a place I go, and to share that with you and have other people see that was an absolute joy, and it was a blast.
Yeah, it was a blast. Somebody asked me how long did it take us to get up and down, and I said a little over an hour and a half, and the response was, "Wow, that's fast." Have you gotten up there faster?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is an interesting lead in too. I mean, I'm one of those people that there's no, half or three quarters. Like, I just go.
Yeah.
And so, I tend to get up there, 40, 45 minutes, and then down even faster. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of hiking, what I found is it can translate to anybody. You can start slow. You can go halfway up the mountain. You go all the way to the mountain. I've done doubles of that mountain in one day and enjoyed that too. So the scalability of it's really fun.
Absolutely. And just so everyone knows, Jeff also did it with a 40-pound weighted vest. I did not have a 40-pound weighted vest. But in the beginning, in the intro of our podcast today, I informed everyone what the Pan Mass Challenge is. What inspired you to take on the Pan Mass Challenge?
Oh, golly. How do you distill it down? I think there's a couple things that are going on inside of me. One is a quest to be somebody better than I was, in the past. And that means trying new things. I grew up in Massachusetts, started my career in finance in Massachusetts. And so the Pan Mass Challenge was always something I knew about that was out there. For a lot of years, I was running halves and full marathons, and that kind of ended when I was 40. And I just decided that with knees intact and, sort of check the boxes there, that I would stop doing that. So again, I'm on this journey to try and figure out what are the next things from a physical standpoint I can layer in. And all of a sudden, just because of circumstance and timing, I was going to be in Massachusetts for the weekend that this race, or it's a ride, it's not a race. That's the joke inside of the Pan Mass Challenge. And just thought, okay, Why don't I just say yes? And I did, and the experience, as we'll talk about, turned out to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you prepare physically and mentally for a grueling 2-day event like the Pan Mass Challenge?
Yeah, I think there's 2 phases to it. The mental part of it, I think, is an extension of, you know, life. I mean, I feel life should just be this continual set of upgraded challenges, and this was another one of those, and so I think, the fish only grows as the bowl it's in, as big as the bowl it's in. So I'm trying to, like, how does the bowl get bigger? Let me move to a different bowl. Let me think about something different. And so biking was something I had never done. I'd done some mountain biking out here in Arizona my early years before I was married. And then, of course, as a kid, you ride bikes everywhere, or at least we used to. I don't know how much
Yeah,
kids do that anymore.
they're electric bikes.
Yeah, exactly. They go way
Yeah,
faster. But there was this kind of curiosity about, biking and like, could I be good at something else? And that curiosity paired with the entry point of the timing of this thing, that was the mental challenge to it. The physical part of it was, I'm looking for other things, and so whether it's hiking and trying to increase the challenge of hiking, this was just something different that I was just really curious. Like, could I be good at it? And ended up, exceeding a lot of my own self-imposed goals in what was an unbelievable experience.
that's excellent. At any point during the challenge, did you think, I don't know if I can finish this?
I mean, there was only one, and it wasn't anything to do internally, and it wasn't anything inside of my control. I mean, I trained really hard all summer. Mentally, I found this very good mental state, and it's interesting. In biking, you're kind of you're flying in a lot of places if you hit it right and you're in the right space. So I felt good. The only time I wasn't in control and thought I wasn't finished when 40 miles into the ride on Saturday in the back of a peloton, a group of riders all kind of riding together, working together. The guy 2 bikes in front of me crashed, and we were going downhill probably 20 plus miles an hour. We were right near the second water station, break station that we had, and there was nothing I could do. I mean, he literally crashed in front of me. The guy behind him crashed into him and made like a wedge in front of me. And I had no choice. And it's sort of kind of a life thing is, if things aren't always in our control, I had no choice but to lean back as hard as I could, slam on the brakes, and then lay my bike down on the ground, sort of fortunately kind of on top of the guy. And then you do that systems check, like any car accidents or anything. If you've been through those things, there's that moment of quiet and, okay, like, where am I? What's going on? Like, am I okay? Is my collarbone broken? Is my bike mangled? And fortunately, after about probably a couple of seconds, I was able to unclip, lift myself up, pick this guy's bike up. And what was an even weirder moment, Joe, was standing there and being like, I'm totally fine. My bike's the tire's not, and he was fine too, which was great. And so, kind of like a lot of life stuff that's happened to me in my journey, I just got back on the bike and kept riding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And outside of that, it was a glorious, very great physical, mental blend of, it was just joyous. And it was really an awesome thing to go past that moment, and then the adrenaline goes down finally and just ride. And so there wasn't a place where I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And I think it's just an interesting thing where you say, like, not everything's in your control. That
Yeah.
wasn't under my control. And for whatever stroke of luck, everybody's okay. And I kept going.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue into, and this could be during your preparation, during the challenge itself. What lessons did you learn that you think will now make you a better leader, a better advisor, a better father?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I was reminded of, which I think as we get older, we sort of forget this because the newness of youth and, again, when you're in high school and college and starting out your life, you're exposed to so many new things and you've never done them before. And then you get good at things and you become comfortable and then you just think, oh, I'm good at that. What for me was really pivotal was like, you can get good at something you've never done before really quickly if you put a concerted amount of effort. I mean, the story behind it is I bought my road bike on Memorial Day and in 2 months did a 190-mile bike ride with relative, and I want to say ease, but again, there was no question of whether I was going to finish. And so it was a good reminder that, like, oh, okay, new things, when you apply your full attention to them, you can get really good quick. And what I would say by that is I was training to ride maybe 17 and a half miles an hour, which is a fairly decent clip for a novice. And at the end of the race, I averaged 19.2 miles an hour, which that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
And at points in the race, you're going, 25, 30 and north of 30 miles an hour. And that's its own fun thing.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I think is really important is not only for me to be reminded of that. My kids were out on the race at various points. Saturday saw me finish. Sunday morning, the cool thing was the race went through my hometown, the ride, and then on Sunday went through our vacation house where we live, and so I got to go through, and it's sort of this kind of this like life journey too. And then at the end of it all, to have my family there, and for my kids at age 13 and 15 to see like, oh, this old dude, dad of ours, who wasn't doing this and hasn't done it long. Like, look at this. This is pretty cool. And so there was a lot of pride in that. And I hope a lesson that my kids take with them, in the short term, but hopefully the long term too, when they're old and bald and boring,
Yeah.
like I am to them.
How did the challenge kind of change your perspective on things like resilience and, endurance? How did it affect you in that way?
I one of the things I'm trying to do post race is just sit and digest and I think one of the things we do when new experience happens, we sort of like rush to make it into something extra or like search for its meaning. I've tried to do the opposite and just say, let me give myself some space in the last 6 weeks since it's done, and just say, okay, let that be its own thing and wait to see what I want to do with it. So I don't know, Joe, if I've really crystallized anything further to take. I really want the exercise to be its own thing. But I would tell you one of the things I'm thinking about a lot. I did this by myself. It wasn't my intention. Originally, it was a childhood friend who's my daughter's godfather that was going to do it with me. And for circumstances, outside of his control, couldn't do it. And so I trained alone, I rode alone, although you're riding with 6,500 other people. So the point is you never ride alone. Um, but so it's that line of like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So the thing I'm really trying to think about, not endurance inside the race, but enduring of like what I want this thing to become is probably to put a team together and make a team of people riding this with me for others as an enduring legacy to build. And I think that would be really cool. And that's where I go with the endurance part of it.
I think I already committed to being on that team next year, didn't I?
I think you did. I don't, again, I think there's this euphoria of like, that sounds cool. Cause I'm that guy. Like,
Yeah.
let's go do this. Let's go do this. And so I'm trying to give you a little space maybe to think, okay, but maybe I'm not scaring you off either, but I've seen you hike and I'm certain that much like me with a little bit of effort and, and attention paid to it and the right equipment. I'll probably lean into that a lot more as part of these answers. I mean, I didn't know anything, and I still don't know anything about bikes, except I went to a shop and I found a guy who owns the shop in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and I said, I don't know anything. Like, help me. And asking for help tends to be vulnerable for us, right? But the ability to not worry that what I was doing and how I was doing was going to be an element to my detriment. So that idea of like building people around you who know more than you do and just being vulnerable, I don't know how high my seat should be. I don't know, like
Yeah.
these shoes suck. He's like, those suck. Like get new shoes. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so to follow the guidance of others, even, in something that isn't monumentally important is an element of the success and the outcome.
Absolutely. We'll have to get really nice concurrent jerseys and
Looking for a sponsor, Joe. I mean,
yeah,
let's plant some seeds.
I think so as well. And maybe we can get Nate to join us too. I don't know.
I tell you what the coolest thing about the ride, watching these groups, because that was interesting to watch these bigger teams, some of which I tucked in with and some, but what I missed that I watched happen was in the moments when you're not on the bike, when you're sitting at a rest station or you're sitting Saturday evening at Mass Maritime Academy, watching, the community of these people. And so I think the best thing about me is I know now what it's like to be there sort of alone and then to watch that. And so the build for me is like, who are the cool people? Because what you watch is you watch teams wait for riders that are slower to all end up in a rest station together, cheer on the last of their riders coming through the finish on Saturday or Sunday, perhaps. And that as an emotional overlay to everything you're doing inside of your own self, I think is something super exciting to think about again with this idea of potentially building a team.
Well, I'm in. So
Love
I've
it.
already officially committed, and let this be an invite to everyone at Concurrent to join the Concurrent team next year. Jeff, you talked about riding through your hometown. You talked about riding through where your vacation and you spend vacation with your family at. What did finishing this challenge mean to you personally?
You know, both my parents passed away of cancer, so the Pan Mass Challenges raises money for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Neither of my parents were treated there. So there's an element of raising $11,000 for, Dana-Farber that gives back to, a disease that's had a tremendous impact on my life. I remember sitting down with, it was the bus ride out from Boston to Sturbridge where the race starts on Friday afternoon, and somebody sits next to me on the bus, and of course I'm alone as I told you, and so the seat's open, and she sits down and we start talking, and it turns out she's a cancer survivor, early mid 30s, I think, colon cancer, and so as we're talking, one of the things I said to her, and is a very weird thing, and I don't know why I said it, and she's the only person I've said it to, and I'm going to say it to you now, is like there was a part of me that thought, should I do this as a hedge against what always is in the back of my mind? Like, what if I get cancer? Like, do I get some karmic points for doing this? And there's one part of me that thinks like, what a selfish thought. And then there's a part of me that thinks like, one, you should think about things. And so naturally I did. And then number two, like I have this core belief that everything is prelude, and so I then told her that, and she was so kind and said, "No, I get what you're saying because I'm 35 and I've had cancer." And then I thought, isn't that just a wonderful thing to be able to sit in front of people and talk openly, somebody I've never met before, and candidly, and just go, "I'm thinking this," and there's no judgment. There's no like, "Oh, well, I've had cancer and you haven't, so what a stupid thing to say." And one of my biggest takeaways in all of this, and what I think really is going on in my life in particular, is like, how do we create these spaces for us to really relate as just humans? And so, if nothing else, what it reminded me of this entire exercise is like the power of collective humanity chasing something together. And I think there's tons of ways you can find that. You can find that, when I was a kid, and perhaps like you find that in sports and teams. But as you get older, it's hard to find that. And so I say this line a lot. I've said it over the years. My dad, who passed away 33 years ago, he'd say, you got to be part of something bigger than yourself. And that's what this felt like. And so for me, thinking about how to take this and expand it into, the next size and scope of what it could be with great people, and to share that with, like, at the end of the day, that is this entire exercise of life that we've got, is sharing these experiences and for common purpose with people. And so to me, that's it. That's what this thing is about. It's another example of it that I found that I think is pretty magical.
Man, that's an incredible lesson for
Yes.
sure. Um, what was the biggest surprise during the challenge or after the challenge? But what surprised you the most about?
I think there's two things. One, the people who show up um, from places that you don't even expect. Money, well wishes. And I'll give you an example. I was riding near my hometown after the almost crash, and a person that I met a year ago who has become a good friend and potentially even better in terms of business and whatever. I was riding through almost the middle of nowhere in a town called Franklin, Massachusetts, kind of near my hometown, and I didn't know this. And I made a turn. Fortunately, this was a turn while I was by myself and no danger to it. And there was a cop sitting there, and there were two people, and it was her and her husband, middle of nowhere, only there for me. So people show up in different ways in unexpected places, and the gift of that is really amazing. And I think, kind of like externally, what really lands with me is that you have to do something with your time, you know, and I've been trying to be more intentional about productively using time to grow as a person. And I think that's one of the things you asked about my kids, like showing them that you're never done. You're never a finished product and you're continuing to evolve is a huge lesson. And so like I think about this as like just part of the overall tentacles in all these places where you're trying to do stuff on this planet in the limited time we have
Yeah.
with people and you don't know who's coming in. Like I had people cry over giving me $100 check because of the emotional attachment they have in a history I don't even know about. And so you think like, I'm just going to do this ride and I'm going to raise this money. And then you're like, oh no, like the peripheral impact of what you're doing to so many people, some of which like you don't even know the reasons why they're with you on the journey, is this like extra level of thought that I'm still trying to land and figure out how and what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. For our listeners on this podcast, what is one last piece of advice that you could provide to anyone who's trying to climb their mountain?
Yeah, so it was Saturday afternoon. So Saturday is the long race. It's 109, the long ride. It's 109 miles and Sunday's around 80. And so Saturday is the day where everybody is, you've been in the sun. It's a long day. You're going to sleep at a college campus, in my case, in a tent in a field, which is wonderful to feel the earth and to soak that in. But I remember walking from my tent back to the area where the entertainment and food and kind of, community area was. And it was the first time I had seen this slogan, and somebody had a shirt on branded with the Pan Mass Challenge, and it just said, "Commit. You'll figure it out later." Right. And so that's the one thing is just commit, just say yes, and you don't have to do it. Your version of your best is your version of your best. So nobody's sitting there with a camera looking at if you finished in 5 hours or 12 hours, which I saw some people do on Saturday. Nobody cares. And, it gets to a line that I remember in running that used to come up quite a bit, which is like, I don't care how slow you're running faster than all the people that are still sitting on their couch.
Yeah.
So commit, you'll figure it out, use resources, and then, and then you're on to the next thing. Or maybe you're not. Maybe that's the last time you do it. I mean, I could have ended up hating this, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is terrible and whatever. But the amount of times you do that exercise of committing, figuring it out, and moving on, I think are what continue to make you evolve as a human being.
Well, that's a great way to end. I think that's an amazing lesson. Just commit. And I think that's something that we all should do at least every once in a while and challenge ourselves and see how far we can go. So, Jeff, thank you for the time.
Joe, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you next to me on a bike next summer.
That's awesome. I can't wait to be there.
Thanks.
Keep climbing, Concurrent.